2nd of January, and school is just 3 days old. This is officially the fourth day of the academic year for 2024, and joining us now in studio is Kelly Jacobs. Kelly, thank you so much for coming back.
It's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great pleasure. So we need to talk about goal setting for the new academic year.
Yes.
What are some of the key things that we need to start with, the foundational things when it comes to goal setting?
I think it's such a perfect time to set goals for the year, and especially for students that are approaching the new year, it can be very daunting and overwhelming for those embracing matric first and foremost. So I think when it comes to goals, it's really important firstly to break down the goals as small as possible. And there's a framework that's known as SMART goals, and it's something I use with a lot of my clients in my sessions too. It's a concept of how we also understand goals. It needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. That's the most effective way to set goals for the new year.
So SMART being a very clever acronym. It doesn't mean you have to be smart to set goals. It means use the SMART to set them. So just run it through quickly again. S stands for?
For specific, so we need to break it down as specific and small as possible.
Okay.
Measurable being it needs to be measurable. You need to see your progress and be able to track it over time period. For example, if you're sitting in traffic and you can't see the traffic and how far it's going to go, you feel very differently as opposed to when you can actually see and measure the progress.
Right.
The next one is achievable. It needs to also be as achievable as possible.
So, for example, not I'm going to fly to the moon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're realistic, you also need to be realistic. And that brings us to the realistic one, which is the odd. And time-based mean that there needs to be a time period in which you're setting to achieve those goals. So, for example, it's always best to break the goals down for the year into quarters.
Now, that's clever because the terms, you got 4 terms in the year.
I was about to ask you that. You're like, what's
Exactly.
like practical wise? Like, how would you set your goals for the terms?
Yeah, so for the terms, I like to personally think of it as a concept called the 12-year week. And the 12-week year, sorry. And with the first term, if you're breaking that down into 12 weeks, because majority of the time, that's about the period that a term would actually be existing for. It's really nice as a student to be setting those goals, also knowing and having a degree of self-awareness of what your capabilities are from the previous year. So breaking it down into a small set of time, so it becomes a lot more achievable. That's the most advisable.
Now, let's talk about those unrealistic goals. I mean, we used the silly example of flying to the moon.
Yes.
Elon Musk is on his way to do that, needless to say. But I'll never forget in school, I think it was high school, we had a day's course where they were teaching us about setting goals. And one of the exercises that they gave us was this paper, this A4 page, and on the page there were all the numbers from 1 to, I think it was from 1 to 50. And they then asked you ahead of the time, but they were all obviously all random, like if you think just all over the place. They asked us, okay, so how many do you think you'll be able to link up, starting at 1, going 1, 2, 3, 4 in a minute? And you think, well, how difficult can this be? So it's like, no, easily I'll get 30 or 40 done easily. And so you set that goal, and then they say, all right, ready, steady, go. And then you find number 1, and then you're like, okay, there's number 1. Now where's number 2? Oh goodness, I can't find number 2. Oh, there's number 2. And 5 or 6 seconds has gone by, and then they're like, time's up, and you've not even gotten to number 10. And that disappointment of I've set this goal, and I horribly underperformed. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially when you have those high expectations of yourself before we even put in the external demands that's placed. It's very difficult, but that's where I also do think it's important to slow it down and to actually recognize that your worth and your value cannot be assigned to your performance. And you also have to have a basis of self-esteem that's not necessarily linked to your performance. So you got to know yourself, you got to know your worth. That's also really, really important, and to be grounded in something also bigger than yourself. So it is, disappointment's a part of life. Also recognizing your limitations is a part of life, but understanding your worth and having that foundation is also a very important part of goal setting, that you're not your performance.
Right. And then when you talk about disappointment, so when you set goals and maybe they have not achieved that goal, how do you deal with the disappointment from there?
Leaning on your support system. Firstly, to also help you recognize your worth and what it is that, again, it's not linked to your performance, but when you're dealing with that emotion of disappointment, you also got to ask yourself, what are the beliefs that you do have about yourself? So when you also it also does help to highlight a lot of those self-beliefs that could be limiting, or it could also be unrealistic. So when you recognize that that emotion is being triggered, it's a beautiful time to be able to just self-reflect and actually look at what are those self-beliefs that you may be holding that could be limiting you, or it could be contributing negatively to your emotional state, like disappointment.
Right.
So would you say that part of goal setting is also talking to your support structure, those people in your life, so be it a teacher that you trust and respect, a parent or parents,
Yes.
To say, well, this is what I think I can achieve. Do you think that's realistic? Would that be a good place to also?
Definitely, because I think we all have blind spots. If you think about it ourselves, we have blind spots, and there's some things that we may think that we can achieve and do, which is possible, but your support system would really know you, and especially if there's a trusted relationship. So it really would be advisable to seek that kind of counsel from people that are in your life, whether it be a teacher, whether it be a parent, a counselor. It's really nice to have that space where they can also hold you accountable and help you see things that you may not necessarily typically be privy to.
That's true. Because a lot of times, I mean, they would see things that, like you said, you may not see.
Exactly.
And then maybe you say, hey, this is what I want to do. And you kind of like maybe underselling yourself or maybe too much, and it's good to have that kind of support in your life. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kelly, thank you so much, giving us something to think
pleasure.
about and to work on. SMART is the acronym.
Yes.
Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much, Kelly.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.